Okay, so welcome everyone. It's good to see you. So as some of you already know, this week's topic is benefiting self and others. And so on Saturday we're covering benefiting ourselves, how to do that and what that means. And today it's all about benefiting others, how to do that, whether this is possible or not. So we can say that everything we ever do in our life, every action we ever perform, every word we speak, every physical gesture we make, every mental movement that happens is preceded by a mental state. That mental state then translates itself into our emotional state, into our feeling state and our energetic presence, and that emotional or feeling state finally finds an expression in our physical form, the way we interact with other people or with ourselves on a physical level. That then in turn creates results on that physical level, results on that energetic level, results on the level of mind, results on the level of thoughts, habits and so forth. So knowing that, you can actually design the way you feel, design the way you act, starting from your mental state. You can give yourself, or the way your life unfolds, direction coming from within. The way I refer to that is creating your life from the inside out. Rather than, for most people, it's right now that we kind of try to create an inside state of happiness by arranging our circumstances in certain ways. Yes, that's the common approach. That's the normal kind of approach in this world. We try to change people around us. We try to change our location or our habits, what we do during the day, and so forth, in order to reach a relatively stable, reliable state of happiness. But it doesn't work, right? The only thing that we ever reach is a changing state, not a permanent state. So our happiness will fade, then we have to do some more stuff so that we get to the next happy state, which then again fades. What I always use as a perfect example for that is your posture. It hurts, you change, it hurts again. You change again. It hurts again, you change again, etc., etc. That is never ending. Trying to find ultimate happiness and peace in your posture is therefore flawed, because you won't find it there. Right? It's like looking for fire in an ice cube. You won't find it there. It doesn't matter how long and hard you look and how persistent you are with your endeavor, you won't find fire in an ice cube. Okay? So in that same way, we will not be able to find any reliable happiness outside of ourselves. Most of you would agree to that, right? So you would say, of course, happiness is not outside of me, it's inside. Where do you experience happiness when you experience it? Where do you experience peace, positive emotions, gratitude? You experience it on the inside of yourself, the inside of your mind. It's not somehow like hidden in a cup of tea, and only thing you need to do is consume the tea and happiness is yours. Right? Or hidden in another person, all you need to do is go and consume the person and happiness is yours. Right? That is often known as a relationship. Like we have that significant other. Why is that other significant? Because that other person apparently makes me happy. So when I spend time with that person, I feel good. If the person behaves the way they should. If they don't behave the way they should, I suffer. And that's just normal. So that also means that as soon as the circumstances change, your inner state changes. That cannot be referred to as freedom. So you might say, I'm quite relaxed, I'm quite a happy person. Most likely that is the case because your circumstances are pretty damn good at the moment. We're all together in a nice room, we have a roof over our heads, we have enough to eat. Everything is actually fine. Most of you are probably quite healthy. There's a lot of things to be grateful for. You can contemplate them and you can feel good. There's not much to complain about, right? Compared with other individuals in this world who are having a much harder time, we're doing quite fine. So sure, in our culture, in our society in which we are doing fine, most people would then consider themselves to be quite relaxed and happy. But let your circumstances change. And what happens to the happiness? It breaks apart, right? It goes away with the circumstances. If your relationship breaks apart, happiness goes with it. If your health breaks apart, happiness breaks apart with it, right? If the body is in a bit of a state of pain, usually already our happiness goes to bits with it. If somebody only looks at us sometimes, just looks at us the wrong way, somebody doesn't answer your email or your text message, and you see they've already seen it, they've already read it, why don't they answer? And happiness goes to bits, right? Just tiny little changes in the circumstance and the inner state changes that. Well, that's not freedom, right? True freedom means that when you say, I'm happy, you mean it. That means you're happy if the text message isn't answered. You're happy if it's answered. You're happy if you're healthy, and you're happy if you're sick. You're happy, right? You're happy and there's a period. That's that. It's not like I'm happy because life is a certain way. And so how can we find reliable happiness inside? We can find it by cultivating, first of all, it's a cultivation, by cultivating stillness in the mind, by allowing your mind to come to rest. Right now, if you look at your mind, you probably find that it's quite agitated, that the attention moves around quite a bit. We just did a meditation together and you might have noticed that the attention doesn't stay on one thing. It just moves around all the time. When that stops and the mind converges together in one point and becomes quiet, the mind becomes empowered through that. Silence and stillness is what empowers the mind. It gives it strength. That's why the Buddha also refers to that as a food. It's a nutrition, the food of concentration. Whereas concentration, I'm not a big fan of that word. So it's not really concentration in the sense of you're kind of pushing yourself onto an object. It's more like relaxing into the breath. For example, if that's your object, if the breath is your object, you relax into it. You befriend it. You lose yourself in it. There's nothing but the breath left. When that happens, there is a very refined form of happiness arising inside of the mind. The mind feels very nice. And if the mind feels very nice, if it's right there, it doesn't move, then that nice feeling of the mind spills over and feeds your emotional well-being. You start to feel really good emotionally. And all you need to do is stop doing. That's what it takes to experience true inner happiness. And when that emotional being is charged by stillness, then that translates into very skillful actions or an intuitive sense of what to do at the right time. We're not doing things in our head before it's time to do them in actual reality. Which would be absurd, right? Think of a boxing match. Again, I always use that example. Think of a boxing match. If you're in the ring, there's probably some of you are fighting or training to Muay Thai or something like this, if you're in the ring and you start to plan ahead while you're in the move, it blocks. You have to be completely present. And that's, by the way, also why most people really enjoy sports. It puts them into a state where they're immediately present. There's no time for thought. If you think you'll have a bad day at training, you think about your relationship, and then you go into the ring, it's not going to work out. If you had a fight with your girlfriend or fight with your boyfriend and you need to go into the ring, it's going to be a tough time because your thoughts are going to be elsewhere. You're split. You lose energy. You can't be fully present. It's a dangerous thing then to go into the ring. It demands complete, utter clarity in combination with the skill that you train, of course. And so life is also asking you for that utmost clarity. It asks you for your presence. It asks you to be there, not elsewhere. Life doesn't want you to think about it. It wants you to live it. And you can only do that when you are available, when you're not occupied in your head. And most of us are continuously occupied, like thinking of our problems, how we will solve them later, maybe even fictional problems that are really not existing at all. Most problems they're just thought-based, really. If it wasn't for thought, you wouldn't have a problem, really. You'd just be sitting in a room, or walking to your motorbike, or stopping at the traffic light. That in itself is totally unproblematic, always. The moment in which you are in right now, right here, you wake up in the morning, you put your feet out of the bed, you touch the ground. That's not a problem, isn't it? You take a step, you go towards the shower. That's not problematic. You turn on the shower. Oh, so that's not problematic. You wash your face, you brush your teeth. None of that is problematic. You'd be surprised how unproblematic your life actually is if it is for the absence of thought. If it wasn't for the fact that our minds are continuously spinning around self-made riddles that must be solved. If that stops, if that idea stops that I am a problem that must be solved, and you realize yourself truly as awareness, you realize yourself as wakeful presence right here, right now, problems end, problems stop. There's no more stuff going on in your head. Or then that stuff that's going on is not valued anymore. You're not buying into it anymore. You're seeing through it. That's when you attain something that is more reliable inside of yourself. And so you start to trust in that. You build trust. You start to trust your own awareness more than what you're aware of. That's the shift. That's a shift that happens with true introspection. You stop trusting what you're aware of, and you trust the awareness itself. That you can refer to in many ways, for example, as my center, myself, awareness, consciousness. You can call it however you want. The words are not so important. What's important is what that points to. That knowing quality inside of yourself. If you can rest as that, not even in that, but if you rest as that itself, stuff simply passes through you. You stop suffering head-made fiction. Thereby, you're freeing yourself from suffering. We discussed that last Saturday, or this Saturday. Now, when you do that, you automatically free the world from a problem. Which is, the biggest problem is the illusion that I am a problem that needs solving. That's the real problem. From that, branching out from that idea, comes others are problems that must be solved also. we start projecting. We see ourselves as a walking problem which hopefully someday will get solved. And so now, sure, when we see other people, we see the same thing. We see that other people are quite problematic, and if they weren't problematic, I could probably be at peace. That's the root of all problems experienced in this world. It's the mind. If it wasn't for the mind, the world would be simply, it would be just a bunch of corpses. But if you add a mind to the corpse stands up and starts to do stuff. And maybe it's good, maybe it's not so good. Maybe it leads to happiness, maybe it leads to suffering, depending on the mind that you put into the corpse. Right? It's like the car will drive according to the quality of the driver inside of it. If you put a drunk driver in, the car becomes dangerous. If you put a mindful driver in, the car becomes relatively safe. Yes, but no guarantees, of course. But the tendency is towards more safety. If you put a mindful driver into the car, the tendency is towards less harm. The same is for our body. If our body was a car, who is driving it? What kind of state is your mind in right now? And so here is how we train ourselves. Continuously asking ourselves, what kind of state is my mind in right now? And then you take a look. I recommend to take maybe one deep, long, calming breath, just to prime your inner eye. Just have a look inside. This signals to yourself that, okay, now is the time to look. You can do that any time throughout the day. It's very short, very easy to do. Just take one deep breath, slow down, and then look at the state of your mind. What's going on in there? That is what you are sharing with the world. That's your contribution on the level of mind. Then have a look at your emotional state. It's probably according to the mental state. Maybe you're thinking about how problematic you are or how problematic your life is, and so you feel heavy about it. There's a heavy feeling coming with that. And then the third thing to look at, what am I doing right now? What's my action right now? And ask yourself, are those three in alignment? Is my mental state, my emotional state, and my state of action in alignment? That sense of alignment is very powerful. Having an aligned person is a very rare thing. Most people think one thing, feel another, and do yet another. And so it's chaos. Our life then lacks a consistent direction. We don't have that consistency in our direction. We constantly change our direction. The mind constantly jumps around, right? So now I do this, then I do that. And as I'm moving towards my goal, I get distracted by something else. I start doing that. I'm hungry. I go to the fridge. On the way to the fridge, my phone rings. I pick up my phone. It's a friend calling. I forget the fridge. I talk with my friend. He talks about something very sad. So I start feeling really sad. So after that I go and curl up on my bed and just lie down and feel sad for a while. Then I suddenly remember the fridge. I just wanted to eat something. Now I feel the hunger again. But now it's quite late already. So I might do something. And so life goes like this, zigzag, all the time. If you can maintain a direction, at least in your own mind, in your own emotional state, life orders itself around that. But that happens quite slowly and gradually, depending on how sustained your mental and your emotional energy rests on one point. Life has to conform to that. In other words, you have these self-fulfilling prophecies, right? For example, you feel like a reject. You feel like a bad person. And so you will interpret everything that other people do in light of that. You think, okay, he's not answering my mail because I'm a bad person. You see, then we project like that. And that's the way the world then appears to you. It's not that the world is any different or suddenly starts to become magical and rainbows everywhere and stuff, but it's that you start to see it differently, and then it starts to work differently for you. That's how it works. And that's very powerful, because right now the world serves you according to your mind, to your belief system, to your thoughts about yourself, about people around you. And so how can we really benefit others? It is just really exclusively by benefiting ourselves. Some people go around pleasing others continuously. People pleasers, right? So my mindset is very much a people pleaser's mindset. So I'm an expert when it comes to people pleasing. Really know my stuff. And the problem with that is, apparently, I'm making people happy around me. But deep down inside, I constantly keep myself from being happy through these actions. I do things that I don't really want to do. I pretend that I'm a person that I'm not really. And that creates a massive split. So I show you that I'm really happy when inside I'm hurting. That creates a split. It's a sort of pretense. To keep up the pretense, to keep up the mask, we need to invest enormous amounts of energy. So people, when they do this people-pleasing thing for a long time, they get exhausted. They have burnout after some point. Or they explode. They just get super angry at the person they were pleasing all the time. So I'm always doing these nice things to you, and you never say thank you, and you never do anything for me. And the other person is always shocked. Where does that come from all of a sudden? And so apparently we might make other people happy, but it comes from the wrong state. It comes from an unhappy me that has somehow learned in its childhood that I must please my parents. And also your parents, they have showed you how to do that. They were telling you, oh, here, have some candy when you had a good grade at school. And they were giving you a hug. They were showing you, yes, here if you are like that, we give you love. And when you were running outside of your house naked and they were shouting at you, you didn't understand why they were shouting, you just saw they were shouting. And angry and bitter. They feel that. They pick that up. Oh, if I'm doing that, I don't get love. I get a denial of love. And then you connect these things. You connect that denial of love with nakedness, for example. Or you connect that good grade with love. And so some people, they become these super performers. Everything they do, they perform super nice, super well. Why? Because at some point in their life, they have connected that. They've learned, if you perform well, if you are good in the realm of doing, you are loved. And so most of our lives are just an endless search for love. Everything we do is kind of an attempt to get some affection, some love, some validation. Here you are, you exist, you're seen, you're okay. Nothing feels as good as that, as someone actually receives you as an okay being. Having that confirmation, you're all right, you're okay. Some of the most powerful, emotionally charged moments that I had with my own teachers was when they told me that I'm okay. As a people pleaser, especially powerful to hear that. And it reveals all the pain, all this trying. I need to please my teacher, I need to please my teacher, I need to meditate extra hard, I need to meditate extra long. I'm doing it all for my teacher. You see, that's the problem. That's not the point of meditation practice, to do it for someone else. But if you do it the right way, if you really do it for yourself, you naturally, the benefit flows out to people. Wherever you go, that's where a happy person is. And happy, I don't mean that kind of happiness that, like a clown or something. That's not necessarily happy. That might be pretty sad, actually. Yeah? Some people who wear that clown mask inside, very often they're quite hurt. And at some point they have learned that if you're not constantly showing that you're super happy and your life is super successful and everything is radiant, people will not love you. So they can't show their sadness. They hide their sadness continuously. Guess what that does to you? If you're constantly burying sadness inside of yourself, it eats you up from inside. And so that honesty to see very clearly, here's what I'm doing, and here's the state of my mind. Bring that into an authentic expression. Let it translate into your emotion, let it translate into your action. But first, see it very clearly. So you can forgive, you can let go of what hurts yourself, and thereby you serve the world a great deal. You couldn't serve anyone else more than by liberating them from your problems. How do you love your wife or your husband? Well, you free them from your problems. You free them from your anger. You free them from your jealousy. You free them from your anxiety and all that. You free them from your necessity to control them. I must control my wife because she might not love me if I'm not controlling her. So the harder I control her, the more she will love me. It doesn't work. So by freeing your wife or your husband from your control, from your neediness, you are of so much service to them. It's so good for them that you are around. Because the problem is never others. It never is. And if the problem is from others, let's say that, then there's nothing much we can do about it. Maybe the least thing we can do is not add more problems to it. By adding our own problems to it. Like I see two people being angry in a fight, and I add my anger to it. I go there and I shout at them too. It doesn't work. It's just 3 people angry now. And maybe even more turn up, and it becomes a group of angry people. And then the anger calms down after a while again. Naturally it exhausts itself, but the damage has been done. So I think that's pretty much it. That's all that comes to mind. When benefiting others, you do it by benefiting yourself. And even though I'm not 100% sure, but I would say you do that by exclusively benefiting yourself. Everything else has to come from that. Every kind gesture, every good action. If it doesn't come from a truly integrated, healed, whole person, then it'll backfire eventually.